Wonderful, wonderful, Luang Por. So greetings, Luang Por, and greetings, everyone. Welcome once again. It's really a great honor and pleasure to have the company of Luang Por Viradhammo with us as we enter a new month of September. So together, let us all put our palms together and offer our respectful greetings with three bows. First bow, second bow, third. So Luang Por, may we invite you to do the opening by giving us a short guided meditation, Luang Por?
Absolutely, will do.
Thank you.
So let's sit for half an hour. I'll give a bit of instruction, but I think most of you are familiar with meditation. I won't talk too much. So, how do you feel sitting here, wherever here is? Awakening to the sounds in the room, the temperature of the heat you feel or the coolness you feel. Noticing the posture, just kind of coming into this space, letting go of past and future. So for a half an hour, make a determination to practice present moment awareness with the way things are. You can begin by listening to sound. So to hear the sounds that exist in your space, you'd have to stop thinking, listen, and let the sounds come to you, whatever the sounds are. And listening is often used as a synonym for awareness itself. So you're aware, sounds are like this. Move to the silence of the mind. Move to the presence of being. It's like this. Feel the breathing of the body. Make conscious the breathing of the body. So this receptive awareness, knowing the way things are. You can introduce a word to create an attitude. So if you just introduce a word like loving kindness, if you just say that to yourself, loving kindness, that creates the kind of, for myself at least, creates an attitude. Listening, loving kindness. It's like this. Notice the feelings awaken to make conscious the physical sensations in your face. So feel the mouth,
No, Paul, we lost your audio.
How's that?
Yes, we got you back.
Back again, okay. I wasn't watching the screen, so much for that meditation. I'm not quite sure where I got muted, but we'll just keep going. So notice, be receptive, that be conscious of the body as an object in awareness. Pressure, warmth. So notice that bodily sensations have qualities, change. You notice that, not just a belief. Notice change, quality. And notice that awareness has no quality, is a constant. Be that awareness. Whenever you start thinking, you notice your thinking, come back to this listening awareness, receptive. Begin to notice that thoughts are objects in awareness. Awareness is not a thought. Memories are objects in awareness. Awareness is not a memory. So keep remembering this awakened mind and use that for the meditation. If you get confused, don't know quite what to do, then just use some simple exercise like listening to sound. So you reestablish listening. Notice the mind with no thought. receptive awareness. So it's more like remembering or recollecting the awake mind. Let's stop there then. Okay.
Luang Por, can we request for Dhamma talk?
Yes, William. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Karina.
Nice to see you too.
Brahma Chaloka Dipati Sampati Kaatan Jali Anan Divaram Ayachata Saanti Dasata Araja Kajatika Dese Sudama Anukam Pimam Pajam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassa. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm in the library of the Monks Vihara at Tisarana with lots of good friends joining in today. It's been I guess, a busy Vasa so far. Lots to do. As you know, we're preparing for the Katina ceremony, October 27th. And our new Dhamma hall is really gorgeous. They're very beautiful. And every time I take someone into the hall, it's lovely to see the joy that that brings to people's hearts, not just because it's a building, but it's dedicated to Dhamma. Obviously, it's part of our the generosity of all the people that support us. And then there's the craftsmanship. The craftsmen who are doing this realize that this kind of a project with all its woodwork is probably once in a lifetime. They realize they're not going to get another chance like this. And so they're very dedicated to making it very beautiful. They themselves do beautiful things. They're gifted craftsmen, and they love the atmosphere. They find it very conducive, and they love Bruno. They love our dog. So all is good. But in thinking about beauty, and we have the capacity to be made happy by beauty, and that capacity it's not, I don't see it based on greed. Sometimes in Buddhism, we emphasize to let go of greed and attachment, those kinds of things. But there is something about the human heart that can look at art or hear music or see the workmanship of really fabulous craftswomen too, and be amazed by it and be uplifted by it and be made happy by it. But that's not greed or attachment. It's not like when people look at our hall, then they think, oh, I want to build one of those too. That would be silly, obviously. So that quality, what is that? Well, it's an openness. One has to actually look and see and observe. So the mind has to be somewhat quiet. And a beautiful meditation hall, that was one of the architectural considerations that we had with the architect. I said, I want the wow factor. I want people just to go, ah, wow, stop their minds from all the thinking and that. And so I see that as the aspect in the Brahma Viharas called mudita, the kind of joy and empathy for beauty that we can have. It's usually translated as the joy you have for maybe your grandchild being happy, which is true too, but also indicates a kind of receptive quality of the mind that can actually see and appreciate. Whereas if we're always caught up with thought and with the past and the future, of course, beauty is not going to enter into our lives because there's no space. We're not available in that particular way. And then beauty, which is just fashion or aesthetics, it gets boring very, very quickly. You want a beautiful whatever and you buy it out of greed. That's not the same. Now, this kind of exercise that we did in the meditation, that's the usual way I teach meditation, is very, very simple, actually. Just something very simple of listening to sound. It's so ordinary. That's so ordinary. But what's extraordinary about it is that we actually have to listen. And one has to actually stop and listen. So it's not an achievement in terms of getting some extraordinary meditative experience, but it's a remembering. You're not remembering a memory, you're remembering or recollecting how things are. And that's really the basis of sati, isn't it? Sati sampajanya, you're remembering this moment. And then from that, of course, you can do very skillful things into that space. But most importantly, I think you can notice the space itself. You can notice the silence. You can notice the background. So you know how I like to talk about background and foreground. That's sort of the model I use a lot. And that these simple models or metaphors of meditation, they're not just to be believed or kind of left on a shelf. They are very pragmatic tools, very pragmatic tools. So when you do something like you listen to sound and you notice the changing nature of sound, that's taking anicca and anicca sanya and sati sampajanya. You're now using anicca as a way of awareness, not simply saying to yourself, the weather's changing, night follows day, day follows night, not that kind of conceptual idea of change, but an experiential and meditative aspect. So to actually listen to the changing nature of sound, you have to stop. You have to listen. And then you notice change. And the most important thing for me about noticing change is noticing also the unchanging. So in Buddhist teaching, we obviously taught, don't attach, things will change. You're going to die. It's all going to disappear. Don't attach to anything. But if that was the only thing there was, it would be pretty depressing, wouldn't it? Like, don't have any fun because it's going to change. Oh, you're happy again. It's going to change. Don't attach to happiness, and so on and so forth. That would be a very grim philosophy. But my sense of it is the reason change is emphasized is true. Don't grasp things which change because they'll burn you. But also that there is the unchanging. And I do think sometimes that's missed. People miss that. And the unchanging, how can you actually realize the unchanging? Well, you have to stop and observe Because if your attention is always in the changing, thinking, analyzing, worrying, fantasizing, eating, drinking, partying, not partying, feeling depressed, watching the news cycles, etc., your attention is in the place of change, which is most of the time. That's our attention is on phenomena, on the necessities of life, on the problems of finances, etc. So very, very little in our lives trains us to actually looking in a whole different direction, look back into awareness itself. I don't know. I never had that. Like in high school, no one taught me that. Maybe in a Buddhist high school, you get that. So it was always about experience and development and being a good person. Sure, that was important, and being a good student and making sure I did my chores or making sure I didn't take too much money out of the bank. So that's all the conditioning that it's necessary to do that, but that's not spiritual. That's worldly. Now the worldly dhammas are super important. They're super, because if you don't get the worldly dhammas right, then you're overwhelmed by them. So without dismissing the importance of that, what was the Buddha's liberation? Why did he teach? And to me, it seems he taught this possibility of the unconditioned, the uncreated. And so awareness is the gateway to that. So when you do this little exercise of just awakening, or you use Luang Por Sumedho's language, it's like this, then that's asking us to just listen, quiet, what's moving, what's not moving. And that kind of inquiry never takes you to an object. What is blue and what is green? Is that a robin or is that a crow? Those are objects your attention pace looks out into. But this is very kind of mysterious or nebulous because awareness is not an object. So when I say notice what is unchanging, then if you try to look for something that is unchanging, you're looking in the wrong place. So the intuitive conclusion is it's awareness itself. Be aware. And so many of you have read Luang Por Sumedho, and I don't know if he probably says it still, it says be Buddha, Buddha knowing Dharma. That sounds pretty conceited. But what it's pointing to is language as not as culture or position, but language as reflection. How do you reflect on language? And this is hugely important, I think, in understanding the Buddhist teaching, because if language is left as doctrine and dogma, it doesn't really liberate. It usually gets you into more doubt. So someone sent me a question that, those of you who are familiar with the jhana language, that they were experiencing piti, but they weren't sure if it was sukha. And so there was this kind of doubt in their mind. And I realized the problem was dogma and the doubt that dogma created rather than actually the awakened mind. Because if they're really awake, they would just know, oh, doubt is this way. I don't know. Now, awareness is not intellectual. Thought is intellectual. Analysis is intellectual. But awareness is not a thought, is it? It's not like a brilliant conclusion. It just knows when you feel doubt and you don't feel doubt. So exercises which reintroduce that posture, remember, and recollect that, to me seem very important, because so much of our worldly life is about dealing with stuff, dealing with health issues, in-laws, business, etc. So we're not given, society doesn't give us much time to actually come to these kinds of reflections. So we come together in this meeting, you do morning meditations. May I suggest you don't have to achieve anything in meditation. Trying to achieve something is still an object that you're trying to get and make bigger. But notice that awakening is not so much an achievement again, is it? So you're not trying to get a good meditation. If you're trying to get a good meditation, then you'll probably get it once in 100 days, and the others will feel like they're not good meditations, but they're just objective values. But awareness knows that that felt like a bad meditation, and that felt like a good meditation. But awareness has no quality in that way. And the more one does this in a very simple way, then the more that becomes the place of abiding. Not because we're hard focused on never letting our minds wander, or we're very, very focused on doing things very, very mindfully. There's a place for that. But this isn't that kind of a thing. It's more like you're in the territory which knows change. Awareness knows change. So I recommend people do this a lot. And I do mean a lot, as much time as you can. People often ask, how do I do bhavana in daily life? Well, it's the same. It's no different. The awakened mind is no different in a dentist's office, in a traffic jam, or on your meditation cushion. You can feel really uptight going to an airport, in a traffic jam, in KL or Bangkok. Singapore doesn't have traffic jams. I've certainly felt that. I've got a flight to go to, and I've got a connecting flight maybe in Korea, and this thing isn't moving, and it's sitting still, and people are walking faster than the car is moving, and I start to get anxious because I want something to happen. Now I can awaken to that anxiety. I can, oh wow, you're getting really uptight here. It feels this way. Now, rather than to say to myself, it'll be all right, Bhante, don't worry, don't worry. I've never found that to be helpful. I just get even more irritated if someone says that to me. But if you actually just awaken, okay, this is the exercise. Anxiety has arisen because of these causes. It's not my fault, just this way it is. And then, oh, there's anxiety, it's like that. And that's good meditation, even though the anxiety might be strong. That's good meditation because one is awakening to that. So then the power of anxiety recedes, and the power of awareness dominates more and more. So all situations are like that. There is an opportunity because all experience points to the space which allows for that experience. Whether you feel happy or sad, all of those things are pointing to awareness, right? But if you think happiness and sadness, those qualities are what's really important, then you're looking out. And they are important. Comfort is important. Good health is important. A balanced budget is important. I'm not saying they're unimportant. But all conditions actually have the opportunity to notice, oh, it feels like this. Because it couldn't happen if there wasn't consciousness, if that didn't exist. So you start to, like in the development of your own meditation, I would suggest really look at that tendency to quantify your meditation, qualify your meditation as good or bad. Well, like that was a good meditation, that was a bad meditation, but see that quite often sitting through the difficulties you had at work the day before and feeling the repercussions of an argument that you had with someone coming through consciousness is a good thing. It liberates stress. You get rid of the stress in your mind. And the awareness then can know that. It can be with that. However, if you're perceiving meditation as like controlling the mind and not having these experiences and having some blissful experiences, then you might pull it off, but I doubt it. I don't think so. What will happen is those materials will come up. Whereas if you see meditation as awareness itself, then all of life is meditation, isn't it? Now, the particularly good thing about formal meditation where you're not distracted is that you can compose the mind, it's not distracted, you can notice material coming up. But the idea is that this awakened attitude becomes the constant. It's your constant friend. It's your refuge. It's the Buddha knowing Dhamma. Now into that space of awareness, then what you can introduce that attitudes, can't you? So if you think about it, how much of life's experience is negative? A lot is negative. Pain, misunderstanding, traffic jams, a lot of sense input is negative. It's not pleasant. It's just the way that we're constructed. The body has some physical pleasure, but a lot of displeasure. It has a lot of pain and stomach aches and etc. It's old and so on. Emotionally, a lot of stuff is negative. Irritation, resentment. A lot is beautiful, but there's a lot of negativity. So it seems to me that what's very important to put into this conscious space of the awakened mind is suggestions of loving kindness. Because loving kindness is the way of dealing with so much negativity that we face. And loving kindness, we portray it as a meditation technique, but deeper than that, it's just an attitude to the way things are. And I don't know about you, I can just I can be meditating, I just put that word into consciousness, loving kindness. That's enough. I know what it means. I don't need a dictionary to look it up. I don't have to do a lot of practice. I just know, yeah, loving kindness, I know what that feels like. So then I start to combine the two. I have the awakened mind, and then I introduce attitudes into it. Loving kindness, or patience, or whatever works for you. And this is the use of language, not as analysis or intellect, but as training, as suggestion, as insight. Because, what is your favorite word in meditation? You don't have to tell me because there's too many people. But do you have a favorite word in meditation? I do. I have 3 or 4 words. And why is it my favorite word? Because I have insight. We all have insight. It's not rocket science, this stuff. We see things, don't we? I see maybe that the way I'm speaking with people is authoritarian, say. And I see, well, that's not coming from a good space. And I might have a word for that, dealing with that, loving kindness. Now that word it's not a scriptural word, it is and it isn't, but it's a word which comes from my own insight, right? You see something and you understand it, not because the texts say you should understand it, but you see it for yourself. That is a cause of suffering for myself and others. That pathway is not a really pathway I want to follow, but my mind tends to go that way. So then from that insight and that suggestion, I discover a word. So Luang Por Sumedho's phrase, or a word or phrase, as many of us have been listening to his talks, it's like this. That word's going to go for 1,000 years, I think. He's saying it so often. And it's actually brilliant, isn't it? Now, it's not a difficult phrase. It's like this. It's not like some fancy Abhidhamma phrase of analysis. It's very, very simple. And yet it's very truthful. And where is it coming? It's coming from Luang Por's insight of the awakened mind. Now, his insight isn't necessarily yours insight. He's trying to offer it to us. But then we have to take that word and make it our own word through our own insight. And then the language you use becomes actually very powerful because it's the language which reminds you of the wisdom already inherent in your character from the practices you've done. If I'm all of us do this, like you're becoming impatient with someone and you use language. Oh, it's like this, be patient. That's actually very, very skillful. That's very skillful. But the skill that the language that Luang Por again is giving us is that really important bit where you notice the background, where you notice that you are not the personality. You are the awareness itself. The personality comes and goes according to cause and conditions. You're not the anger, you're not the fear, you're not the resentment. They're strong, they come and they go. That's your real home with that awareness. So it's like this, or background, foreground, or listening. All it's the same, but it has to be yours. You see what I mean? It can't be mine. If it's not yours, it'll never become authentic. You'll never use it. You might, like at a dinner party, say, yeah, Luang Por says it's like this. Yeah, okay, but that'll just be dinner talk and Buddha babble kind of stuff. but actually to have an insight and then to get language which reminds you of that insight is what we mean by deepening the practice. Not through like, I don't think it's through fantastic states of mind. I'm really deepening my practice. My head blew off yesterday or something like that. No, I think it's much more human and humble. You know, like Luang Por Sumedho's statement, it's like this is not, he's not showing off, is he? Look, it's like this. He's not doing that. No, he's telling us, yeah, I had these problems, and then it's like this. There's a kind of humility in that. And so I would ask you, like, again, what's your favorite word? Do you have a favorite word? What is the language you use for your own insights? Or is your language just critical and self-judgmental? That's not Dharma language, that's ego language. Gosh, I had a terrible meditation. It was really terrible, Bhante. No, meditation felt terrible. It's like this. You're not someone who had a terrible meditation. It's just terrible feels like this. If you get what I mean. So listening to your own inner language is terribly important, isn't it? And we do, and we don't. Sometimes we notice the inner language and we notice it's full of ego, or sometimes we get caught up into it. So any language which is creating a strong sense of self, notice that as an object. That's not who you are. That's not your real home. Might be conditioned from childhood or a situation or whatever. So then from listening and knowing the inner voices, you begin to connect body awareness, don't you? So you begin to see that the feelings of self-aversion that I have, or whatever, as an example, and I begin to inquire, where is that in the heart? Where's that in my belly? So the language becomes language of not self-judgment, but of Dhamma Vicaya, investigation. You start to use language to direct your attention to that which is important. And that's not a whole lot of intellectual thinking. It might come from intellectually considering the teaching, but it's actually very direct. Where's the body now? Where's the feeling in the body now? And then there's the silence again. There's the silent attention. What does the body really feel like? What does the heart feel like? Loving kindness. And this begins to all add up to an ongoing practice, which is consistent with your needs and your insights, not just an abstract Buddhist thing. It's about your mind, your conditioning, and the way you think and the way you operate. And as you do that, then awareness is enhanced because now you're using thought in the right way. So samma sankappa, or right thinking, I would say, like if you think about when you started practice, you read a bunch of stuff, and you read maybe texts and suttas, and then you read contemporary teachers, and then you kind of got your head around it, and you had the intellectual part down, and then you started to take those ideas and say, okay, I get it. Okay, then you started to do the work. Now, if a person is just doing intellectual work year upon year upon year upon year, that's just more thinking. That'll create more doubt, and more doubt will create more thinking. So intellect is important, but it's actually not that difficult. It's then taking language and then directing it to, why do I suffer? What's the feeling of suffering? Suffering feels like this. That's very direct language. Then from that, you can start to get insights. You see, oh yeah, I'm suffering because I don't want the fear. I'm afraid of fear. Oh, okay. So the suffering, yeah, I have to welcome the fear. So then I start to use welcoming. Very simple word, welcome fear. Welcome it. And so the practice builds up such that the insights that you get are samadhi, right understanding, not just scriptural. If you leave it at intellect, it won't free you. You may get an A in your Buddhist studies and a little certificate saying you are a Buddhist, but it won't necessarily, you won't necessarily be liberated. You'll have a little certificate. Good. Frame it, put it on the wall. But when you're in a traffic jam, you might still suffer. So samadhi is your understanding, right understanding. Oh yeah, I get it. That's why I suffer. And then sammasankappa is coming from that. It's coming from the text, sure, but you begin to craft a language which is according to samadhi, according to your insights. And the insights are according to the teachings, the end of suffering. And then we were talking about faith with the friends here. Then you start to have faith, and some of these words become your good friends. They serve you well. And because they serve you well, you have faith in them. So like the word loving kindness, I have a lot of faith in the word loving kindness because it serves me well. And it's continued to serve me well. And I will serve it well in that kind of a way. And then language becomes, actually, it has this kind of richness, but it's not complicated. It's because its richness is significant to your heart, to your character, to whatever you're working on. Overly intellectual, too much study, I found when I talk with people, they usually fall into doubt. And they don't see the doubt as an object. That's a very hard thing for intellectuals. I'm not dismissing intellectual activity, but awareness is not an intellectual conclusion. It's an experiential, existential realization. It's different. So how can we use thought to help us towards right understanding rather than right belief or right dogma? And then how can we enhance those understandings that come to us through practice by using sammasankappa, right thought? And then thinking is really skillful. Then thinking is right thinking because it's imbued with wisdom, it's imbued with awareness, it's imbued with heart, all the kind of qualities which are part of the path. So I think that's sufficient. I'll leave that for your reflection. Any questions for anyone?
Kandamayang Dhamma Kataya Sadhu Karam Tatamase Sadhu 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 Anumodai.
Thank you so much, Luang Por, for a very lovely reflection. So I would like to invite our friends here in the Dhamma hall. If you have any questions, please feel free to click on the unmute button and raise hand button, and we'll unmute you. Anyone's got a question, a reflection, something to ask them for? Don't be shy.
Miri. Hi, Miri. If you unmute yourself, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you doing?
Very well.
Are you in India?
Oh, yes.
Ah, all right.
Wonderful here.
Uh-huh.
Yes, Luang Por, it's always, I might have even asked this question before, but it's maybe not a question, but an observation that the going to silence, it's very interesting because silence, physically in the room, it's very quiet. That externalized quietness, I find it very hard to separate from my awareness of the quietness. So just like in a quiet room, but it seems kind of spatialized in the room, but then I can't separate that from my awareness of the silence. Is there actually a difference? Can you comment on that? Thank you.
Well, I would say as long as you're looking for something called silence, then of course that's not awareness. So I think the language in silence is perhaps fundamentally a suggestion of letting go of thinking and then being with the non-thinking mind, silent attention. And then so like I use environmental sound just to get people to kind of play around with attention. But I think the basic thing is to notice the gap between thoughts, to notice the mind, which isn't caught up with thinking. That's the hardest thing, isn't it? It's quite hard to, first of all, notice the gaps between thoughts, and then to abide as that silence of non-thinking without trying to get rid of thinking. Because I think all of us as meditators, in the beginning, we're just hammering away trying to get rid of thinking. And then we'll do anapanasati, we'll do all kinds of stuff trying to get rid of thinking. And of course, that doesn't work because it's still tanha. And then, you know, from Luang Por's suggestions, notice the gap between thoughts, and then say a deliberate thought. Notice before the thought, silence, no thought. Say the thought, tomorrow is Saturday. Notice the space, silence after the thought. So that silence is, I think, what's really important. But any sense of looking for something will always be some form of discomfort, won't it? So the ideas of like surrender and so on are really important. Okay. Oh, and thank you for the new book, Ganga Ma's book. Amara series, reveling in it.
Oh, yes, David was wondering if yes.
And yeah. I haven't dipped into it. Amara Siri had first dibs on it, so I'll have a look at it.
Okay.
So thank David first.
I will. I'll pass that on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anushka.
Anushka, can you unmute yourself, Anushka?
Hi, Anushka.
Hello, Luang Por.
How are you?
So, good enough and happy to be here to see you for a very, very long time. So there's couple of things. Firstly, when you started the meditation, I noticed this like push come, like this force of energy. And prior to we came on Zoom, I came a little bit early, so I tried to sit quietly, and I was able to sit quietly. As you said, like I used the image of Buddha and the Buddha, like I've been trying to train to sit with that image with Buddha. So it was peaceful, but I could feel quite a bit of energy in my hands. So I just kind of opened my hands and try to use breath to just flow through. But when we started, I was feeling this, like almost this real push, like coming on. And I try to follow what you were saying and hear being aware, being conscious, being aware, sitting. And then it was like still pushing, and just the thought came, I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma, and just automatically started saying it. And as you said, notice the change, I could almost feel it backing up.
Uh-huh.
Very gently, just backing up this energy. And prior to this, if I felt something like this, if I had become aware of it, I'd almost get afraid to be
Right.
honest, because I was aware, but I wasn't sure how to manage, just sit with that. Although I was
Right.
sitting, I wasn't quite sure. But as you said, notice the change, and I was reciting this. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dhamma, I take refuge in the Sangha. And it was quite beautiful to notice this very slow, it was almost like doing qigong, I suppose, like lovely, gentle movement, change.
So you have a question around that? It sounds like intuitively you understood how to do it. Sometimes you understand things in a way which are intuitive. You just play with them and negotiate them, and you have the resources to somehow come to a conclusion. So it seems that's what happened, correct?
Yes, but it was very helpful. Sometimes I think, although that may happen, you don't know, because the mind can try to come. I noticed there was this mind trying to come in, and I just try to follow exactly what you said in terms of just being aware of the mind coming in.
Okay.
And
so
then,
you didn't become concerned about the object. You knew it as an object, so you stayed with awareness.
yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Right.
So that was, and then it started to show those spaces when the mind came and just sat back, then awareness was, and then it was like the awareness went outside the body and was watching what was around, kind of thing. So I just sat there, just sat,
So that means that your sense of awareness was somehow enhanced through the instruction on noticing change.
Okay.
Kind of deepened, I would say.
Okay.
So if you, I don't know, I use that model of background foreground.
Yes.
So even an experience of heightened energy like that is still a foreground experience because it's changing.
Yes.
And the background is the unchanging. And I think when you contemplate change, that's one way to do that. And then your own inner resources of Buddha Dhamma Sangha brought you to a sense of ease.
Okay.
So there's some, like all of us have resources from the practices we've done. And quite often we're not sure quite how they'll come up, but they do come up because we've done practices. So play around with that, like, it's a really interesting exercise. If you have pain, say, some discomfort, move your posture, whatever, but just say, well, what is not pain? Or notice the changing nature of pain. See how it's changing and say, well, what is unchanging? So there's many ways to play around with the kind of reference to awareness. Yes. And that's kind of one of the classic ways.
Oh, thank you for that, because I did I was sitting with some pain, discomfort later, so I didn't know exactly. I sat through it trying to watch the change, but when it got to a certain level, that was too difficult, I did shift. But
yeah, you don't, the thing about pain is sometimes our early instructions are like, you shouldn't move, just sit still, don't move on pain, which can be helpful if you're restless. But if you have real pain, you can just make yourself more tense. But if you're going to observe pain, I think that for me, the best way is to see pain and feel its changing nature, and then not absorb into the pain, but see what is unchanging to get to the background. But then to also like listen to the body you got to keep this thing going a while, right? So kind of be careful around. I don't know, like monks, early days, Wat Pong, not moving was a huge kind of thing, which I think wrecked a lot of knees in the Bhikkhu Sangha. So there was a bit macho.
Yes.
And I think, like for me, I was sitting with young Thai monks who were super flexible, and that they didn't have any pain. I was stiff. I didn't sit on floors at home. And so I would try to match them and not move, which was just ego, right? Just kind of going on. So to actually contemplate pain in sitting is not just sitting through it. You can do that, but actually, can you see the foreground as pain and the background as silence, knowing? It's hard to do. But if the pain is moderate, it's an interesting exercise. If it's extreme, you take medicine or you do what you have to do. So moderate pain that's not going to hurt you, you're not afraid of, is a very interesting exercise in seeing, oh, pain is a changing thing, what's unchanging. So it's a kind of thing you do in moderation, obviously.
Well, that's helpful. Thank you very much, Luang Por. And
okay.
I also wanted to say thank you, because all those years ago in 1987 or 88, when you were in K Road above the Indian shop, my parents met you just spontaneously. And because of that moment, all of this has been possible. So I really am very grateful. Thank you very much for your practice. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. It's good to remember.
Yes, thank you.
I am old, aren't I? Okay, Anushka.
Thank you.
Karen?
Karen?
Hi, Luang Por. Can you hear me?
Hi, Karen. Thanks for the chairs.
Thank you for letting us have the opportunity to offer them. Luang Por, this is more of a comment because I thought you wrapped it up so beautifully early on. You came full circle. First you talked about awareness and how, the thinking mind comes to a, it doesn't have to come to a stop, but basically, it does slow down. But you ended up by saying how the thinking mind can be imbued with all these great things, all the good stuff like awareness and insight and all of that. And I thought that was really, very beautiful. So thank you for that.
Okay. We'll see you in December.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
Hong Chia?
Jai? Yes, can you?
Hi, Luang Por. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Beautiful talk. I have
Thank
two
you.
questions. So the first question is to clarify, how do you differentiate Dhamma investigation and thinking? Is it a matter of my language use? Like if I'm thinking I'm chasing an object versus I'm chasing Dhamma and self-reflection? And my second question is more about, like in my day, in the day for me, I tend to try to bring my awareness back to the present moment. When I'm walking, I try to be present. But then when I go to sleep at night, I notice that my mind becomes very active and I dream a lot. And in that sense, I can't bring that awareness. I can't see the awareness, and I wake up feeling restless and a lot of thoughts. So how can I apply the methods you taught in my sleep? Is that
In your
possible?
sleep? Well, that's a tough question. I'll take the first one first.
Thank you.
So investigation of Dhamma, for me, Dhamma Vicaya, is taking a theme, applying attention through the theme, but applying the attention through silence. So classically, if you take the Four Noble Truths, the theme is, why am I suffering? What's the cause of suffering? So then if I'm feeling discontent about something, I'm not quite sure, then I'll say, what's the cause of suffering? What do I have that I don't want? And what do I want that I don't have? But then the attention has to be silent. You know, rather than me, well, I don't want this and I don't want that. It has to be silent. So the application of the attention, how I attend or what I attend to, comes from the theme that I'm choosing. But then there's the silent attention to notice. Or let's say the anicca sanya, noticing change, actually as an experience rather than as a belief, means that they say, okay, what's the changing nature of pain? But then I have to be silent and then notice, oh, this is changing. And then in that silence, there can be some insight or some understanding. So that's Dhamma Vijaya. Dreams. Now that's a tough one, isn't it? In one way, you can. I mean, the dream world is just doing what it has to do, right? So you can leave it alone, or you can try doing yoga nidra before you fall asleep, and try to cultivate awareness in sleep. But that can sometimes backfire, and you don't fall asleep. So it's a kind of risky strategy. So I would say when you wake up, right? The first moment that you notice, what's the mood of the mind? What is it anxious? And in that moment, try not to let the sense of self be created. So let's say you have a complex situation at work that you're going to have to face. Now that could have produced the agitated dream states. But when that, say, anxious state comes up from the dream states, then be very careful to just notice the body and not create a self around it if you can. Because then you're not being born into that attitude. Let's say I wake up and I'm worried about a work meeting, and the dream states had that, and I wake up and then I let my mind run with that worry. Then I'm reborn in the office as a worrier. But if I can notice that worry feels this way, and that's why morning meditation is so important, and just settle down, let the mind settle down, then the dream world did what it had to do, but I haven't reinforced that. There's all kinds of things about lucid dreaming and so on. I don't have much experience in that. The only experience I've had is doing lying meditation, going to sleep, and then trying to develop awareness in sleep. But that's tricky because like you can feel rested and not fall asleep. Or you can be aware in deep sleep, believe it or not. But that's a very kind of refined and high state of mind. Most people, if they try to meditate in the sleep state, they either fall asleep or they stay too awake, too jangled. So I wouldn't muck about with your sleep cycles. Sleeping is very important, as we all know, and just accept that the subconscious is doing what it's doing, and it'll take care of itself. But focus more on the state of mind as you wake up. That's my suggestion. You might ask others who are more in tune with, like some people do dream analysis. I was never into that. I figured the dream world's taking care of itself. I've got enough to do. I don't need to do that. But so it's not a maybe helpful suggestion, but just that in the morning, really notice what's the mood of the mind. Okay.
Thank you, Luang Por.
Okay. Malika.
Okay, we have time for one last question, Malika.
Thank you for those pictures.
Thank you.
How long were you in the robe? A whole month, or was it 2 weeks? How long was it?
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
It sounded like a really important experience. Huh?
It's something.
Well done.
My question is, how do you practice now in noble silence? It's just hard in normal
daily life. And have you got any ideas how you can practice in a busy life noble silence?
You can't.
Can't. Okay.
You have to. I mean, your family will think you're crazy.
Yeah.
So, and noble silence is not meant for family life. Right speech is meant for family life. So you have to redefine noble silence as not non-thinking. That's really what noble silence is pointing to. It's the mind which isn't just caught up with thinking. So it's the internal silence. And that you can work with in family life. And then it's right speech, because if you try to practice noble silence and you know, you start to alienate your family, or your family thinks you're weird, or it doesn't help them, it makes them uncomfortable. So if you can use right speech to encourage right speech in the family, that is helpful. But don't try to be a monastic and a layperson. When you were in the monastery, then you could do noble silence, and it's quite nice. But if you try to mix both, it's going to be both. Like if you make a determination not to speak and it doesn't work, you'll feel frustrated and the family feel frustrated. So consider what right speech is more, but see what noble silence is internally. The silence of no thought, the silence of
what I
not
mean.
worrying.
That's what I mean. The chattering, whether we can stop the chattering. Is it only during
You can awaken to it and identify it as, oh, worry feels this way. Identify the mood if you can. And then try to like say it to yourself. What am I going to do tomorrow? And then stop. Notice beginning before you say the word. Notice after. Start to play around with a gap between thoughts.
Yeah.
So rather than just being frustrated by the chattering mind, make it a whole kind of a theme of contemplation. What is thought? It is an object. So what typically happens is when you notice your chattering mind, then you try to repress it by being mindful or focusing. But actually, when you notice that you've been thinking, that's the moment that thought has actually stopped. So rather than regretting the fact that the mind is chattering, another way to approach it is say, oh, great, I'm back again. Awareness is like this. This is silence. So you start to notice the gap between thoughts. That for me was a very important moment in understanding how to practice with the thinking mind, because what I habitually did was when I noticed thinking, I would just focus on something like walking or working or my breath. But what I was trying to do was get rid of thought. So there was still vibhava tanha going on. But then I realized, well, thought is natural. It's just a natural phenomenon. And what I had to learn to do is to see it as a phenomenon rather than try to get rid of it. So that's one thing. Are you just trying to get rid of thought because it's so annoying and you think you should be silent? And that's tanha, isn't it? So take the Four Noble Truths. And then from that, when you notice thinking, that in that moment, can you have enough mindfulness that when you notice thinking, you notice the desire to get rid of thinking? That's a heightened moment of awareness. So you start thinking about whatever, about the grandkids or whatever, and then you notice it, and then, oh, thinking feels like this, as opposed to, oh, there go, I'm thinking again, I should stop thinking. Now that moment leads you to the sense of a gap between thoughts, a space between thoughts, and you get better and better at it.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I know that I can't practice noble silence at home, but then the mind, that was the question. I just wanted to ask how you can do that noble
Notice the
silence
gaps.
in the mind,
Yeah.
not physically.
Yeah, not speaking. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you.
We once had an anagarika. Who he was a bit of a character. he was a very provocative chap. So he made he was into electronics. he made this sign with little lights in it that he could press, and it would go noble silence. And then if anyone tried to talk with him, he'd press his button, noble silence. He didn't last long. He was totally nuts, actually, I think. But it was interesting. But look, like going back to what I just said, Malika, really, really notice that moment when you're noticing thought is the moment that thought has actually ceased. But we are so quick to judge the thinking mind that then we try to stop thinking and we've missed the moment of emptiness, of awareness. So program your practice to notice that moment. And then to say, oh, great, I'm back. Rather than, oh gosh, I'm thinking again. And that shift to something which is positive helps you then appreciate, oh, there's the silence. There's the space. There's the gap.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, thank you, Ajahn.
I thought after the monastery, you're trying to practice noble silence with your family. Well, that's a tough number.
Yeah, it's impossible.
That's impossible. Yeah, that would be crazy. Anyway, I'm glad it was a good experience. Well, you were a seminary then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. Will you do it again?
Yeah, if I can.
And are you allowed to do it like once a year, or depends on many things?
Yeah.
Yes. Many things for our family. Anyway, good that it worked out.
Thank you.
Okay, my friends, I think we say adieu or au revoir or something like that.
Thank you, Luang Por. What a beautiful session it is today. We shall
nice to be with you.
We shall now close by Luang Por leading us in the Buddha's words on loving kindness.
That would be good. This is what should be done. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. All right, friends.
Thank you. Right, so respectfully, sincerely, and let's all offer our greetings to Luang Por by taking leave, by chanting the Araham. Araham Sama Sambuddho
Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. All right. Stay healthy. See you next time. Ciao. Auf Wiedersehen. How do you say in Spanish? Adios. Adios. Adios, amigos. How do we say?